Greetings from Kigali, Rwanda on this 18th day of December, and welcome to tonight's broadcast. These are our top stories today. President Paul Kagame has noted that peace, security and good governance are the foundation of Rwanda's and Africa's development. Effective 20th December, people going to bars, restaurants and churches are required to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19, among other measures that have been put in place to curb the spread of the pandemic. The Nyungwe National Park Administration is urging users of the Nyamagabe-Rusizi Road that passes through the park to be mindful of its cleanliness and safety in the park, as non-compliance to this continues to endanger the ecosystem. Good evening, it's my pleasure to have you join us today for the news in English here on Rwanda Television. My name is Gloria Mutesi. Starting us off tonight, President Paul Kagame has noted that peace, security and good governance are the foundation of Rwanda's and Africa's development. The Rwanda head of state made the remarks at the ongoing Third Africa-Turkey Partnership Summit at the Istanbul Congress Center. Sessionary begins our coverage today.
The Partnership Summit is being attended by top officials from both sides, with up to 40 African heads of state and government present, and important matters to do with cooperation on the economic, security and other fronts being discussed.
First, peace and security, as also clarified by the Chair of the African Union, and governance have been at the core of transformation journey for all of us. Rwanda continues to contribute to this and will partner with other African countries to ensure that stability prevails on our continent. Second, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought to our attention the importance of building resilient health systems, and Africa is no exception. Lastly, because of Africa's favorable demographics, education continues to be at the forefront of our strategy to create a knowledge-based economy.
The African leader also commended Turkey's initiatives as a development partner for the continent.
In a short period of time, diplomatic and partnership relations between Africa, Rwanda, and Turkey have grown rapidly and strongly. Our cooperation, mainly in the areas of trade, transportation, health, and education, has created a solid base to further strengthen our ties. The increased investments in Africa and in Rwanda by Turkish companies exemplify all this. Turkey has also become a reliable partner and market for Africa's goods and materials, with exports increasing significantly last year. These gains will have to be sustained, and there is no doubt that our mutually beneficial cooperation under the Joint Action Plan will be a catalyst for this.
As Turkey's economy continues to grow, the country has expressed its desire to increase its investments in Africa, aiming to exceed the $50 billion mark. Over the last 18 years, that investment has increased from 100 million to slightly more than $6 billion. Turkey is a country that occupies a unique geographic location, lying partly in Asia and Europe.
The Rwandan government has resolved that effective 20th December, people that go to bars, restaurants and churches should be fully vaccinated against COVID-19, among other measures that have been put in place to curb the spread of the pandemic. Now, a cross-section of residents who spoke to RBA, told us that they've welcomed the new resolutions and called on every Rwandan to adopt them so they can be as effective as they've been in the past. These residents say they fully understand the reasons why the government has decided to take these measures based on the past experience on how the measures have been effective before. We all see that the pandemic is on the rise. The dynamics of the virus keep changing every day. It's therefore very important to continuously test as much as you can so you can continue with your day-to-day life without the risk of infecting each other. They also say they are ready to implement these new measures and on them to battle against the new Omicron variant like they have in the past.
As people in Kimisagara, we are committed to implement these measures wholeheartedly. We are calling upon all people to properly wear their face masks and practice hand hygiene, as well as all the other measures in place.
Officials from the Ministry of Health say deciding to put in place these new measures is to contain the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, especially now with the new Omicron variant. The Minister of Local Government says that some people had started to become complacent towards COVID-19 prevention guidelines and that if Rwandans adhere to these measures, this will soon be behind us.
People are about to get back into lockdown because of complacency. But these new regulations come as a message to show that things have changed. The pandemic is ravaging, and that is why we decided to take these measures to reduce the amount of time people have to spend together.
The new measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19 have been taken at a time when new infections continue to rise lately. 153 infections on Friday were registered among the 19,327 tests conducted. Thursday, the 16th, saw 142 new infections recorded among the 12,246 tests conducted, while 125 infections were recorded on Wednesday among the 9,816 tests conducted. Let's further expand on this. On 14th of December 2021, a cabinet meeting convened and came up with resolutions to fight the spread of the pandemic. 3 days later, new COVID-19 preventive measures were announced, and earlier today, while speaking to the Health Minister, Dr. Daniel Ngamije explained, among other things, what has changed between these few days that have necessitated new regulations.
I think what is different is the increase of cases of COVID-19. And you know that we announced that we are already with the Omicron variant in the country. So the spread of the pandemic is extremely huge. We can see that for the last 3 days, we are reporting more than 100 new cases per day. We are no longer with an incidence of 5 cases for 100,000 people, which it's a level that beyond it, it's clear that where we are going, it's not good. We should make sure that we stop that trend of increasing COVID-19 transmission. So these measures that were taken, they are there to reinforce what we did. Measures were in place 4 days ago, trying to reduce the risk of exposure in one another way. So if you go through these measures, you'll see that the common factor among those measures is to reduce the exposure between people who might be infected to those not yet infected. Yeah.
Is Omicron variant responsible for the high numbers we are seeing?
Likely, because the transmission rate is extremely high, and this is the main characteristic of Omicron. The transmission is high, and we can feel it, we can see it. We are already doing sequencing. We can see how in few days we had very small numbers, and later on we have good number of clusters here and there, in hotels, in business places, in some companies, in some groups of people who attended different events, meetings, weddings, parties. So we need to take measures to contain that transmission, which is likely to be high in coming days, especially this is a festive season with a lot of events already planned for it. So all measures that you saw, the reason is to reduce the risk of transmission of this disease. Yeah.
These restrictions also come at a time where so many people are also being vaccinated against COVID-19, which is sparking a debate that these restrictions are still in place regardless of the vaccines that are being given to people. And then people are having concerns that the vaccines aren't as effective as they should be.
Vaccines are effective in terms of reducing the risk of hospitalization. Even in Europe and some countries where already they are now facing an increase of trend in terms of admission in hospitals, the majority of people who are admitted, they were not vaccinated. This is an explanation showing that if you are vaccinated, you might be infected, but a big proportion of those vaccinated and infected, they will not turn in severe cases for being at the end hospitalized. So, which is a huge advantage, because we don't want people to be hospitalized. If at the end you are infected and you develop mild symptoms for this disease, you can be treated at home, you can self-isolate yourself, and for us, this is a huge impact for getting people vaccinated. And for this reason, we are encouraging people to be vaccinated, and where required, for those eligible, after 6 months of being vaccinated, they get their booster dose. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's also a concern of high costs of travel, especially for people coming into the countries, considering the 3-day quarantine and then 3 other PCR tests. Hence, an inconvenience to so many people, as they put it. Does it really play a part in preventing the spread, and is there hope for this to be resolved?
Yeah, asking 3 tests at arrival, at day 3, and then at day 7, it goes with measures to make sure that even someone coming at the incubation period of the disease, at the end, we are able to know that he's finally infected. And before being in public, before being in his community, we are able to contain him. People are traveling with a PCR negative test, hold maximum 72 hours. They will spend their trip some hours, they will be in different places, they will arrive, we'll do the first PCR test. If it's negative, good enough. But we came to realize that some turn positive on 2nd day, 3rd day. So that's why we need that the PCR test on day 3. And then from there, on day 7, the duration of incubation is between 3 to 5 days. So if he traveled already with a PCR negative 3 days ago, and he arrives here, he spent 3 days in quarantine, we're already with 6 days since the first test. And we have a chance of getting the majority of them on day 3. So that's why we are requesting those 3 tests. But the government decided to facilitate, especially in these days, where we want people to be massively tested by reducing the cost of the PCR. Rather than paying 47,000, they will pay 30,000 per test. So and then the gap will be subsidized by the government.
And that is effective from when?
The communique is going to be issued starting today. Once the communique is issued, at least they start to enjoy that benefit. Yeah.
Dr. Daniel, as we wind up this discussion, it's obvious that the government is putting in tremendous effort in vaccinating people, which is definitely a step in the right direction. But what is your biggest concern as the Ministry of Health right now? Also given the reports that have shown that the new variant is not as severe as it is.
Our concern is first to make sure that we don't have huge number of cases. We need to contain the spread of the disease. Number 2, this COVID-19, always, we do still have a lot to learn. As of now, people might think that Omicron is not severe like it used to be for Delta. Who can say what will happen in 1 week or 2 weeks? So do we take the risk of saying that let's be infected massively because the disease is it's a minor one? I don't think so. So we want to make sure that we contain numbers of new infected people. If at the end it happens that Omicron is not severe, good enough. We will not complain for it. But we don't want to take the risk of being surprised with people massively infected, with the disease changing his symptoms and starting to be extremely severe. So I think it's a matter of being logical and avoid to take unnecessary risk.
Moving on, the Nyungwe National Park Administration is urging users of the Nyamagabe-Rusizi Road that passes through the park to be mindful of its cleanliness and the safety in the park, as non-compliance to this continues to endanger the ecosystem. The park has now launched a campaign called Nyungwe Icheye, which includes messages dedicated to drivers, passengers, and all other park users. These passengers were on their way to Kigali from Rusizi. They said they're being mindful of the park as they passed through the national park.
A lot has been said about being mindful of the national park, and we are also doing our best to do so. However, the mistakes are still in place.
We eat whatever we have and then keep the leftovers until we're able to dispose them of the right way. However, the Nyungwe Culture Village Cooperative, which normally facilitates culture tourism in the park, says that they still collect a lot of plastic waste and leftover food in the park, and some people even relieve themselves in the national park.
There are still some people who still dispose bottles, different paper waste and containers from which they have eaten. Some even relieve themselves in the park. The reason we remove this is because it's possible for an animal to come and eat that waste.
The park has launched a campaign called Nyungwe Icheye, which includes messages dedicated to drivers, passengers, and all other park users, as explained by the head of the park's Community Relations Department. The park's management is concerned, saying that if no action is taken to reduce this, the ecosystems are in danger. There are no statistics of animals that have been killed due to human actions, but there is a group that has been collected data since June this year, and it will soon be out in the coming days. The cabinet that convened on the 14th of December 2021 approved of the request to nominate Nyungwe National Park as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Experts in agricultural development and farmers believe that non-government organizations play a key role in partnering with the government agencies to promote agriculture and productivity. Agriculture accounts for 24% of the country's GDP, which is likely to increase when more capital is invested. Innocent Mugabo now reports.
Across the country, agriculture activities are often involved with government agencies and their partners. Each sector usually has an agricultural worker, but it is difficult to reach out to every farmer. Farmers emphasize that working in cooperatives helps them have better knowledge of agriculture techniques through their collaboration with non-government organizations, hence increasing agricultural productivity.
When you reach my home, you can see that I'm developing. I was very poor before, but after joining the cooperative, I came to realize that it is through farming that I will develop. I can now buy any animal that I want to help me during my retirement age.
We used to unprofessionally practice agriculture, hence a decrease in productivity. We have now been trained and there is an increase in productivity. Preparations for the 2022 season are underway. Farmers say the situation has changed as more farming cooperatives have already marketed their produce, so they can even go to the banks to provide them with financial support. We plan to get 350 to 400 tons of maize in this season, all of which have buyers, and we signed the contract. Now we are negotiating with the banks to give us loans. Banks also use these contracts in the process, and banks like AIF provide the loans earlier. One of the rural development organizations, including RWADI, monitors farmers' cooperatives of 27 districts with about 350 cooperatives with 280,000 members already connected to the markets to sell their produce. The thing leaders of these communities find to be increasing the farmers' love for their work.
natwe rero nka rwari ntitwatanzwe ubu dufite imishinga ibiri.
We now have a project of teaching farmers in the eastern province how to practice irrigation agriculture using solar energy. In Ngoma district, irrigation is in full swing as 2,000 farmers cultivate without fear of the dry season as they use solar energy to irrigate their fields. While agriculture accounts for 24% of the country's GDP and the beneficiaries account for more than 60%, agricultural experts find that non-government organizations play an important role in partnering with the government in the implementation of various agricultural policies.
Usanga rero bene iyi miryango akenshi ijya mu bintu.
These organizations engage in different activities like cooperatives, and the ministry looks at broader agricultural policies. The government at all levels needs non-government organizations. Members of the parliament stress that the continued approach to the transfer of funds to farmers in this regard is one of the ways to accelerate the development of this sector instead of keeping more funds at the national level.
Districts have enough information, but we also do. In the discussion, we will look at how their budget would increase compared to the rest. There's no way to decentralize the budget and leave it high. That wouldn't be adding up. Otherwise, when you reduce the projects, you reduce the budget as well.
Statistics show that the budget for agriculture has risen from 214 billion Rwanda francs in 2016 to 305 billion Rwanda francs, which is equivalent to 10% of the total budget the country will spend this year of 2021-2022. Innocent Mugabo, RTV News.
Thanks, Innocent Mugabo, for that report. Now, 2,000 tree seedlings were planted on Saturday as a result of the collaboration between Kicukiro district officials and those from the Rwanda Environment Management Authority. The seedlings were planted in Masaka sector in a settlement that is home to some of the most vulnerable people in society, and once mature will include fruit trees and others that will facilitate vegetable gardens to flourish. The settlement has 191 residents.
You know
that we are struggling against a serious problem among children of malnutrition and stunting. Fruit trees can help in that respect, which is why we want to plant the seedlings in this settlement that, as you can see, has many children. They will help them and their parents to be healthier, and we also intend to teach them on the importance of preparing good meals and eating a balanced diet to fight malnutrition and stunting amongst toddlers. As for environmental conservation, that's part of the budget. So when partners come to our district, we discuss on what should be given priority. We therefore agreed that planting trees is important. We intend to plant more in other settlements, as well as schools, where we will plant fruit trees. As a way of teaching the kids to adopt the culture, we will even give them some to plant at home, so the culture is adopted everywhere. Education experts in Rwanda have continued to express concerns over students sent abroad on government scholarships, only not to return after completing their studies. The problem of brain drain has continued to be a problem for many African countries, not least of all Rwanda. Sessionary now reports.
Figures from Rwanda's Ministry of Education indicate that up to half of the 100 to 120 students it sends to study abroad do not return, and the problem is worst in the health sector. Doctors are like hotcakes, who are scooped up the moment they graduate. It doesn't matter where in the world they end up. They are always welcomed with open arms. So a student may look at the salaries doctors are given in Rwanda and opt to remain in the country they went to study in to make more money. We have such people, many examples actually, of people who went to study abroad only to never return. Reports have been filed at the Office of the Auditor General, and we have copies of them here at the university, in the Human Resource Department. Many simply do not return. Look at the health sector. We do not have enough doctors. Surgeons are a dime a dozen. Hospitals send people out to study to become specialists on government scholarships, and they don't return, despite being given an education on taxpayers' money. yet they do not return to serve the people that sent them. This is particularly unfortunate when you consider that Rwanda's health sector has a deficit of a staggering 75% when it comes to highly skilled workers. We still have a deficit of at least 75% because, according to our goal, we should have at least 4 specialists for every 1,000 people in the country. And that includes doctors and other professionals in the health sector. Yet we are still at just 1.1, meaning we must quadruple that number just to meet international standards and be able to properly provide the sort of services we are charged with. Even though the government has adopted measures to ensure that the people it sends abroad to study actually come back to serve the people that paid for their education, economic experts maintain that even just one slipping through the cracks is a massive loss.
Iyo kontra iba ifite na terms. Kuvuga nyuma yo gusinya twakurihiye.
Those contracts should also include terms, for example, a requirement that a person work for at least 5 years. I say this because there are some who return as required, but before you know it, they are working for international organizations like the UN. You find that teachers are needed for certain subjects, but they are nowhere to be found. Experts believe that proper follow-up is necessary if problems like this are to be resolved once and for all. First, there must be someone to follow up on such things. Reports are submitted from the university, the Auditor General, and the hospitals, but nothing is done. A person has a debt of 60 million Rwandan francs, yet they are allowed to return abroad without any hindrance. Arrest warrants should be issued for such people so that they can come back and serve the citizens that paid for their education. Every year, Rwanda spends between 6 and 8 billion Rwandan francs on students who go abroad to further their studies, most of those sent being government employees and university lecturers.
And that's it for tonight. Wishing you a wonderful festive season. May God grant you what you hope for and much more. Until next time, I am Gloria Mutesi. Bye for now.